Hi everyone, my name is Melanie Eisen. I am the Associate Director for Professional Development at the YU School Partnership. The next 2 weeks we're going to be covering the topic Creating Meaningful Activities for All Students. I was a kindergarten teacher and an elementary school teacher for 22 years at a Jewish day school here in Fairfax, Virginia. During that time I was trained by Dr. Scott Goldberg, the Vice Provost of Yeshiva University in differentiated instruction. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be combining some differentiated instruction tools as well as some tools and strategies that highlight 21st century skills, teaching skills to be using in the classroom to create meaningful activities for all of your students. I came across this slide not long ago, the profile of a modern teacher. 21st century teachers are not experts in technology, they are experts in habits of the mind. In a rapidly changing educational landscape, modern educators have all of these qualities. Take a minute to look over each of the heads and identify with some of the ones that you've been embracing lately in your own practice. The ones that stick out in my mind are the ones that I can find scattered throughout this image. Model resiliency and perseverance. Feel secure asking their colleagues for help. Move into their students' world even if it's foreign territory. Invite mistakes into their lives. Are comfortable not knowing what is going to happen. If you had asked me to describe my teaching practices 15 years ago, I can guarantee you that I wouldn't have picked those to describe who I am as a teacher today. It's important to look at these different roles as roles we must undertake in order to keep our students vested in the content we're trying to teach them, to keep them interested in the learning, and to promote that they become lifelong learners. The way to do that is to model being a lifelong learner, and you've taken a huge step in that by taking this course right now. So these images of these heads are going to keep coming back over the next 2 weeks as I want you to look at them and see how many of them you can identify with and how many of them you're going to try to pin on yourself as a 21st century teacher. Oftentimes I hear teachers say, I have to get through the content. It's not enough that I don't have time to pay attention to creating different kinds of activities for my students. The worksheets will do it. The textbook will take care of it. The workbook will take care of it. I need to get through it. And I completely understand that. There is content that we need to teach from each grade level to grade level in order to ensure that they're ready for the next grade level. But as you do it, I would like you to ask this question: which content is most important? And I'd like you to take into consideration the 40-40-40 rule. What do you hope after you teach each lesson that you give or get through each unit? What do you hope will stay with your students after 40 days, after 40 months, or after 40 years? I recently had a conversation with an algebra teacher, a teacher of 10th graders, and I said to her, do your students ever ask you, why do I have to learn this? Why do I have to learn how to solve for X and Y? Will I be using this in my daily life? And she said that she always recognizes that it's a great question, but she's not just in the business of teaching them that content, how to solve for X or how to solve for Y, but how to look at any problem, break down the components, and figure out a strategy on how to best attack the problem, to look to each other, to their peers for help, to have collaborative meetings to solve these problems. Those kinds of qualities don't just describe students, they describe professionals in our lives today. So I always ask teachers, are you getting your students ready for a lifetime of tests or for the test of life? So when you're thinking about the content you're teaching, and of course these are essential questions, there are pieces of it that you're going to want to stick with them long after they've left your classroom. So encouraging and designing activities that will help you to ensure that you are providing opportunities for them to learn and interact with material so that it helps them to become lifelong learners is part of what we're going to do over the next 2 weeks. One way to involve your students in the learning is to create a KWL chart, only this one's like a KWL chart on speed. It's double the size. When I first started teaching, KWL charts were all the rage. We would ask our students before starting a new topic, what do you know about this topic? What do you want to know about this topic? And then after you were done with the unit, what have I learned about this topic? Were we able to tackle the W's that we had when we first started? But now that we live in the information superhighway, we're going to add some other qualities to our learning as well. Not just what do you want to know, but how am I going to find out? And that doesn't always mean Google, right? Who are the people within our community who are, and bringing kindergarten into this, our community helpers who can help us solve our problems? Who can we bring in from the outside to help us to understand this information about this project, about this unit? After I've learned all of this about a particular unit, what action can I take? How can I take my learning to best service my world? And even after I've done the K, W, H, L, and A, what questions do I still have based on the learning that I've just done? And maybe I won't answer them this year, but we're going to parking lot them because they might be questions I can deal with in the future. Always having those questions means I'm always going to be pushing myself to expand my knowledge to find out the why. Over the next couple weeks, we're going to look into making the content more meaningful to the students by creating intricate and interesting activities to bring them in. One way to do that is through student input. Understanding who our students are will help us to create meaningful activities for them. Taking learner profiles of our students will help us to understand who our students are, both in terms of what type of space they like to learn in, whether they like it to be calm and relaxed, or whether they're okay if a lot of stuff is going on at the same time. Do they like to work independently more than they like to work in group? What kinds of prior knowledge do they have about the variety of topics you'll be covering? What kinds of questions can you ask your students to gain their best understanding and to gain their best participation for each of the lessons and units you do? We're going to talk about differentiation. Differentiation can happen within the content, the process, and the product. What kinds of activities are you going to provide for the different learners you have in your classroom to ensure that they interact with the content, that they're able to interact with it in different ways, and that the products they produce based on what you've taught them really reflects what they've learned? We'll bring in some technology as well, not as a separate category necessarily, but as a way to support the learners. It's important for us to really ensure that we allow our students to show everything that they've learned in the way that they feel most comfortable in, and sometimes that takes us outside of our own comfort zones. And sometimes it's just the way you ask the question. So I want you to watch this video with me, and I want you to watch it to see, look what happens when they change just one word in the question. So what did you think about the video? What does it make you think about as you're asking the questions? How are you going to frame your questions that you ask your students to encourage them to think creatively? What word might you just have to omit to have them interact with the content that you're teaching them in a slightly different way? In the research section that you'll come upon, there are videos that show exactly that. How are teachers getting their students to interact with the material in a different way? Okay, so now we've almost completed the first section, which is the learn section. The next section you're going to do is the readings, and they're going to focus on two of the areas mentioned in this video, student voice and differentiation. Next, you're going to complete the assignment and do the apply section, in which you take an existing activity you do in class and tweak it to incorporate one new idea you learned this week. Excuse me. Feel free to submit your assignment in English or in Hebrew. Both of them are fine. For me, I can understand them. My feedback will always be in English, but don't hesitate to submit in Hebrew. You're going to participate in the online chat space by adding your voice to the discussion. Each week should not take more than 2 to 3 hours. So if you're finding that it's taking you too long to get through the material, or you have any questions or concerns at all, please reach out to me at the email you see on the screen. I hope you enjoy, and I look forward to seeing your work.